Still got to let a few more people in the door. People are flooding in. Good morning. I'm Paul Furey, if we haven't met before, and I'm joined this morning by my esteemed colleague Catherine Gordon, and we're going to run a two-hander today. If you want to, you can choose how you do this. You can make us as small or as large on your screen as you like, so that we're not taking too much of the visual area. We've got some absolutely amazing visuals this morning created by Vianne Furey. The clues in the title. My daughter is an art student and has done just the most amazing job, so she's really upped the ante on the graphics. I'm pleased to say, well, I don't know if I should be admitting that the graphic that you now see is mine, but everything else that's way better is hers. I don't know what's going to happen in September when she goes to art college in London, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Catherine, maybe a little hello from you, and what are you looking forward to this morning, Catherine?
Hi everyone. I am looking forward to. Paul's going to do a live piece on me, and I've realised in thinking about this topic that it's just really timely. So I'm looking forward to that and seeing what comes up in the questions later.
Fantastic. I'm literally going to take a moment to explain what we do, because we've got probably more than 35 minutes worth of material, but we wanted to give you maximum value. We know you're trusting us with a really important 45-minute slot on your Thursday, given tomorrow's a bank holiday. But just to locate us, just if you don't know us very well, or you've only come across us once or twice before, what do we actually do? Well, and why we do these webinars. Obviously, these webinars are free, and we do them because we want to show people, we want to show the world how we work, how we think. Now, we're not trainers, so this medium somewhat squeezes us into a training corner. But as Catherine pointed out a moment ago, we try to make these experiences, and not just sort of passive webinars, but into something which actually has a large element of the practical about it. So don't just listen to us, watch this. And we often involve the audience. This one's a bit, it's a little bit trickier in so much as somebody would have to come up with something quite big. So we haven't chosen to turn the cameras on you this morning. Be that as it may, we're a very practical sort of consultancy. We're about behavior, feelings, and how people converse, how they get stuff done together. Enough of that. My aim this morning, as always, is to promote thought, awareness, and an experiment. So what would really delight us is if you went away from this morning thinking, I'm going to do that, I'm going to have a go at that little bit. That would make us very pleased. And of course, you can always come back to us and tell us what happened, what you did, and what effect it had on the people. So let's make a start. I'm going to, so I've got these screens that have been beautifully made by daughter Vianne. I am not as conversant with them as I am with my own when I've made them from the start, but so I'm going to take my time because I don't want to mess up some of the stuff she's done. So anyway, the first thing I want to talk to you about is this business of ask twice. You've probably seen it or heard it going around. Ask twice. This thing about don't just ask somebody how they are. I'm just going to switch off my mic, my camera. Quite rightly, Catherine's left the screen. Thanks for the cue, Catherine. And we're being asked, are you okay? And now that's not enough, you say, no, really, how are you? Now that's fine, but it does sound caring, and it has caring intentions. But I suppose this entire webinar is about doing something more, taking it several steps further than that, without invading the other person's space. And for us, this kind of helping, and I'm just gonna okay, this kind of helping involves being rather different to how we imagine helping is, and it involves three particular elements. And I'm just gonna hang on. There we are. I'm just going to take this off the screen. You see what I mean? I'm not quite as ducks in rows as I usually are. So the first element that this involves is directness. And not only directness, but directiveness. So being a tiny bit bossy at the beginning, and I'll detail that in a moment. The second element that we want to cover, and it involves, is time. How much time, whose time, when? And thirdly, the third sort of pillar of this approach to helping people at a distance is silence. And I'm hoping that you'll see and hear a great deal of it, if you can indeed hear silence. So those are the three things that we're going to ask you to hook this approach on. All right. So firstly, let's go to the first bit, which is about well, actually, no, before I go into dive into it, just a little bit about the ethos. There has to be some sort of ethos. Oh, someone's got a microphone unmuted somehow, strangely. Anyway,
Paul, that was
not to worry.
talking about ethos.
Yes, indeed. So ethos, this is about how we approach this whole thing. And Catherine, were you going to do this, or was I?
I was. That's why I was.
Oh, you go ahead. You crack on, and I'm doing your illustrations. Go for it.
So we can get confused about what we are doing when we're helping. And I work with a lot of carers, so in the caring industry, and this line between what's my responsibility and what's the choice is really important. So the way this might show up is you may think you have a responsibility to help someone because you think they need it. So that's your responsibility to think about helping them. They have a choice to accept your help or not. So there's a difference. There's no responsibility to force it on them. They have a choice to accept it. And you may not give the other person a choice to avoid the topic, but they do have a choice about whether they do anything as a result of the ensuing conversation. And you may think you have a responsibility to try and help, but it's not your responsibility to come up with the solution. That belongs to the other person. So this line about responsibility and choice is really important philosophy. Thank you, Paul.
You saved me from marching all over your stuff. Thank you very much indeed for butting in there. That's great. So yeah, it was something that Catherine and I talked about a lot, and now we're going to dissect. It's not really a methodology, but it's a way of approaching the situation. Now, I can't emphasize enough that it is extremely simple, and I don't want to overcomplicate the whole piece, because it's something that every single person in this room can do to assist somebody who isn't in the room. So the way we looked at it is a kind of, it's like having a map, and or one way of looking at it is to imagine a map, and the first bit is about being direct, and which in this case means, look, I can hear that you're not very happy. Let's talk about it. And that's it. It's about, rather than asking, would you like some help? It's actually saying, what can I do to help? The assumption being that there is some help on offer, and it's not an idle offer. Would you like some help? Just like when, the washing up, would you like some help, dear? And you expect the other person to say, no, it's okay, I'm fine, you go and sit down. But what can I do to help is not just a polite thing to say, but it sounds like the person who's offering the help really means it. And we're going to show you what that sounds like. I hope I get it right myself, but that's for in a few minutes. So that's the first thing. This business about being direct, and there's also the thing about being directive. Now, this is a strange one when it comes to helping, because people think that you can't be directive when you're helping, and actually. One thing I picked up, and you've probably experienced this as well, if you've been in therapy, anybody out there, or counseling, and Catherine, I'm sure you've dabbled in that area. There are some modes of therapy which I'm particularly fond of. Particularly, there's something called co-counseling, where the counselor tells the other person what to do, and the other person, as Catherine was pointing out, has the option to choose to do it or choose not to do it. But the direction and the directiveness is there to push the other person to explore the uncomfortable. So it's stick the pin in the map and say, I'm here to help. How can I help? And then maybe suggesting, let's talk later. I don't have proper time now. So that might be more forceful than some people are used to. The second thing that we want to incorporate into this approach, want you to bear in mind, hopefully to encourage you to do it, is, oh, and in fact, we're going to hand over to Catherine for this bit. You're going to talk about time, aren't you?
I am, and I'm wondering if there's a grey cloud hanging over anybody listening when they're thinking there might be a lot of time involved in this, therapeutic sessions. The thing is that actually you don't need a lot of time to help people. We so rarely get other people's time and attention that a little bit of time can go a long way. And the other thing is that you also don't need to pretend you've got endless time around this. So what's smart to do is to decide on the piece of time, how much time you've got to give. And again, it doesn't need to be that long. But so here's the picture. The arrival time is 11. So it's got a box around it. And then give that box of time without strings attached to the other person. And in that time, the third factor is silence. So you can think of time along with silence as being that space that we often tell people we're giving them. I want to give you the space to. But this is the hard work bit. It's during this silence that you're working like the proverbial swan. You look very calm on the surface, very quiet on the surface, but underneath you're working phenomenally hard, and you're working really hard to give free attention to the other person. And what you're doing many things while on the surface looking like you're just quiet and receiving. So you're listening and watching for feelings. Spot doesn't look that happy here. You're staying out of the way, which means not butting in with your thoughts and observations as far as possible. And you're keeping your mind on them and not on you. And this is the bit about free attention. And it's a bit human beings struggle with, is really thinking about the other person, giving their attention to the other person. So I think it's our intention to jump in and go ahead with that. Is there anything else you want to say about that, Paul?
No, you've pretty much you've covered it beautifully. There was one thing I said no, and then I meant yes. There is one thing which you're very good at, and I hope to demonstrate as well if I need to. It's the business you mentioned it last, which is this free attention thing, which is that if my attention wanders when I'm trying to help somebody, I don't know, something happens in the room, and goodness knows we're at a point or in a state where lots can happen in the room. One of my children can walk in, the dog can bark, somebody can ask me what I want for my tea, I spill my coffee. There's all kinds of stuff that kicks off at home that doesn't kick off in the office that people can't see. And so I have to be prepared to tell the other person honestly, look, I'm sorry, I'm distracted, something's happened here. Or something you've said has just set me off on another train of thought. And then admitting it. So the free attention has to really be free. And if your attention is wandering, I wouldn't put the word duty to it, but Catherine is very good at interrupting the conversation to say, look, you've lost me, or no, my head's gone somewhere else. So I always know that when Catherine doesn't say that, I know I've really got her attention. Okay, so shall we have a go at your situation, Catherine?
Yeah, so I'm going to put my video back on. Is that?
Yeah, well done. You put your video on. I'll do the same, and I'll turn around and face you. So what we'd ask you to do is to actually, we had a graphic here, and I think I've gone and got rid of it. I'm just going to put the other graphic on, which had the. I'm actually going to stick on the three pieces, rather scruffy writing: directness, time, and silence. And if you keep an eye out for those as you're watching this unfold, and yeah, see what you spot, and would like it. Best of all is if in about 8 to 10 minutes, when we've finished this situation, or at least taken it on a little step further, is if you could be commenting either during the situation or after it in the Q&A pane, what you've spotted, what was there, what was missing, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you recognized, what you didn't. That would be absolutely phenomenal. So yes, and the Q&A pane is in your little control panel somewhere on your screen, wherever you've got that. Okay, so I did the sort of directness and directiveness already off screen, because when we were planning this webinar, do you remember I turned around to you? It was in a chat pane, actually, so it shows you can do this even when you're online, when you're not actually talking to somebody. And I said, shall we use your situation? Or let's use your situation, because Catherine had let drop a little hint in one of the chats that said something about her son, I believe, and I know little more than that, and he's far away and he's going through a particular test, and Catherine was seemingly finding it hard to know how to help. And I prompted her, and she said, oh, what do you mean? And then I prompted her again. So I was sort of directive before all this, before we switched on the camera days ago. So here we are. We've got about 10 minutes, so we're not going to do justice to the situation, but at least maybe we can start a little something that's going to be genuinely useful. I'm all ears.
Thanks, Paul. So I think the interesting thing is just giving me the time is great, because even though I'm in this business, it wasn't until we were talking about this topic I thought I really want to explore this a little bit. So it's a kindness to give me that time. So what I think the whole lockdown has done is kind of amplify some issues around the way my sons, I've only got sons, are moving into the world. And I've got two at very different stages, one of whom has actually been very locked in by lockdown, and one of whom is kind of feels locked up a long way away. And the one I think, because I've been very concerned about the one that's near and his kind of opportunities, I've been a bit blind to what's happening with my relationship and what's going on with the other son that's a long way away, locked up on his own. I mean, not literally locked up, but feeling quite locked, feeling like the little bits I'm seeing is that he's feeling this is kind of an endurance test on his own. And
that must be hard to watch without being able to help.
Yeah. And I think what's happened is that initially he was sharing news because it was new what he was doing, and as he's gone into the long spell, he's not really sharing news. And yeah, it's hard, because then I can't have a conversation with him that shows I'm there. So it's actually a parallel of all of this, and I'm struggling to know how to let him know that he can talk to me about being bored, or yeah, whatever's on his mind. And yes, it's really hard for me, because what's happening is I'm feeling like I'm getting disconnected. So yeah,
so you can have a session like this, but by not talking about the proverbial elephant in the room, you feel like you're detached, like it's almost a politeness now that's fallen between you.
Yeah, so there's not really talking about the stuff that matters, or he's having, yeah, that's right.
And it sounds like at some level you've decided that that's not possible. You're worried about going there, mentioning it.
Yeah, it's just in sort of thinking we were going to have this conversation, it's made me think around maybe he feels that he has to be strong and that only the positive feelings are okay to share, and that those other things are just, the endurance is something you just have to endure. You can't ask for help around it. Or
so
so
one possibility is that you think he might be empathizing with you. He might say, I don't want to worry mum, so I'm going to put on a brave face because she knows she can't help me, so I'm going to be brave. But actually
maybe,
it's having the reverse effect. Maybe.
yeah. And of course this isn't just a work situation, so there's a long time pattern over this. And I don't, the kind of question of giving him autonomy, which is the choice thing, at the same time as saying, I'm really here. I really, really am here. And anything, I'm happy just to sit on the phone with you, is a difficult balance to get right.
Is it a difficult balance? Or are you just finding, or are you also finding it a difficult thing to say? Because you just said it to me and it
Yeah.
sounded like a very powerful invitation.
It's actually creating, I think it's best said in person, to your point. And one of the things about, we're the 8-hour time zone difference, so having the time to say it in person. I'm wondering about saying it in WhatsApp, actually, whether I could do that. Yeah. There's something I'm still worrying about.
Yes.
Because part of this is to do with autonomy.
You don't want to clip his wing. You don't want to start to encroach on his privacy or his way of dealing with it. Maybe you don't want to spoil his strength, sort of mess up his game plan, as it were, by going too far.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to sound judgmental. And I think that's the balance in it.
Which bit are you worried about sounding judgmental? I haven't heard it yet. Is there something else you'd like to say to him which is stopping you saying anything at all, which you fear would be judgmental?
Well, I think saying to him, you sound flat. You seem flat. You seem a bit, I mean, so he writes that in the WhatsApps, could in itself sound judgmental. Like it's not okay to be that. So maybe that's the thing to say, you sound like that and it's completely fine to be like that.
I liked it when you said, it's not that I dislike what you just said. I liked it when you gave that really strong invitation.
Yes, what did I say? That something about giving him, balancing autonomy, but also making it okay to talk about whatever's on his mind.
Yeah.
Was that it?
Yeah, it was kind of, we don't have to talk about anything at all. Just, you can talk about just the fact that you're bored. I mean, you did it better than I did, but because that's already, I liked it, I suppose, now on reflection, because it was like you were already having a conversation. The conversation had begun.
Yeah. So an invitation. I guess I'm a bit scared to, I don't know what it is I'm scared about. It is that it might come across as judgmental, even though I'm saying it's
Wow.
okay.
I've just thought, there you go. Now you've done the magic again. That, I was just pretending to be him for a second. That, telling me what you're worried about's been the best of it. That's my highlight so far.
That I'm worried about being judgmental. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Yeah, seeming judgmental.
Seeming, that's it.
Being or seeming, because I'm working
Well,
very hard to not be judgmental, but I may be at some level, you know, that's true. But seeming judgmental.
and also, I've noticed something that's happened. Your face and everything, and your countenance, and the way you're talking has completely changed now.
Yeah, I've released the tension around it. That's what the tension is.
And maybe that's, and if I was encroaching, that's what he'd love more than anything. Because if he has you there as he knows you at your relaxed, confident best, then he might feel encouraged. Don't know, but it's certainly, I felt very encouraged from what you said, the invitation and the admission of what you're uncomfortable about.
Thank you, Paul. Amazing. Thank you. That's really helped.
Are you happy to leave it at that for now? It's a very personal subject, so it feels really crude and cruel to suddenly stop it.
No, no, this feels perfect placed. I've had the release. I've tuned into the judgment. That's what's worrying me.
Thank you so much for offering that one, or allowing me to boss you in to talk about it. So I'd be really interested now, as I'm sure you would be, Catherine. So we'll keep our cameras on and we'll see. Can you, while I'm fiddling around with screens, Catherine, can you have a look and see if there's anything in the Q&A pane that people are chipping in?
Yep.
And I'm just going to get us onto a screen where I can scribble.
So somebody said, we've got a lot of comments here from someone who's really been paying attention, which is lovely, called Kelvin. So can I invite anyone else to put some observations up? But I love what Kelvin's been writing. So the first thing he noticed was that Paul looks very attentive. This is at the kickoff. So you really gave me, and I think for anyone else watching this, that's what I felt. You really gave me your attention. You kind of leaned in and you made sure it was about me. And then at some point, actually, Kelvin, I wonder if you could clarify for this. Paul fed back, because you waited quite a long time before saying anything, Paul. You let me talk for quite a long time. And
what was that line?
It was good, because I was kind of, I was testing the edges of what this problem was. So I'm seeing what the soft bits were in my mind and what was hard. So Calvin said, Paul fed back what I was thinking. So I don't know what he was thinking, but maybe Paul, you could tell us. This was early on.
Yes, I think Catherine, Kelvin also says Catherine looked away significantly there at 9:51, so about 4 minutes before the end. Yeah, good spot, Kelvin. And again, I guess what you were doing was by being quiet, but you had to be quiet. All you could do was watch, and it's almost as if when you put yourself in that position, as Kelvin did, you see everything. And I could have commented there, Kelvin, you might have, I might have. So you're thinking, but I thought she was thinking, she was kind of looking down, imagining. And because I know Catherine a tiny bit, I thought, this is her, I'm thinking face. I'm going to leave her alone.
And Beth has written, I really like the pregnant pauses. They were really effective. So it's the gift of silence.
Yeah.
And then Jane writes that I noticed you offered observations about her physical reactions, which was really useful feedback, but it was really useful to me.
Great. And in fact, that was Kelvin's very point. I think, yes, that really works. Obviously, if someone's thinking that you've gone very quiet, yeah, because I'm thinking, but that's not what you're driving at. So yeah, well spotted, Kelvin and Jane. Yeah. Oh, hang on a second. Oh, yes, he did. Yeah, he spotted me. Kevin, you spotted me. He butted in when you were more or about to say something. Yes, it was a gamble. And in this medium, you're absolutely right. And I kind of kicked myself and I thought, no, I've got to carry on now. So that was a bit about the directiveness, because I thought, and that happens face to face as well, Kelvin and everybody. When you sometimes, I have the rule, I've invented this thing that I give myself permission to butt in and even cut across somebody if it's to listen. I think I'm not allowed to butt in if it's to add something. So sometimes we have to butt in to let the other person know that we're there, that we're with them. But it's a fine line. And Kelvin, that's a great observation. I semi-regretted it, but I think I got away with it. Right. Time is not on our side. Tanya
Daniel
said,
has said, that's quite interesting, isn't it? Lots of feedback bordering on role playing. So that invites me to say, I was conscious of being in front of the cameras, but we haven't actually gone through this, and I was only a little bit conscious of the cameras. So there's a little awareness that there are people listening that this might amplify with, but I don't think we would deliberately play it role playing. Might be because we're in front of the camera.
It's a tiny bit, but I think I treated you as I would, and when we're on a call, so I think I was with you just as I would be with you if there was just you and I in the room. So there's maybe a bit of electronic interference that you're picking up, Tanya. But good point. We're going to
No,
crack
you
on.
mean role playing conversation between me and my son. That was excellent. That's true, and that's a nice spot.
Ah, right. We misunderstood. We jumped in and got all defensive, didn't we?
So
We're not role playing. It was real. Okay, we're going to have to move on. Lots of fantastic comments. No sorry required, Tanya. It was us who were jumping around saying, we didn't role play, honestly. Right, we've got a few more points to make to stay on schedule, and there are some cracking things that I'd like to sort of shoehorn in. So I'm going to turn my camera off, I think, at this point. Yes, and you're going to do the same, aren't you? Fantastic. So where are we? So yes, what happened? It's actually I was going to show you the construct, the little construct we have for empathy. I might show that in injury time. So when we've after quarter past, if you can hang around, I'm going to show you the 3 steps. But basically, it's how they feel, what about, and why. And those are the 3 questions we're trying to answer and then offer. I will come back to that. Catherine, could you please nudge me to make sure that I deliver on my promise?
Sure.
But essentially what I was concentrating on is staying really out of the way, and trying to not, as Catherine was trying to be so careful with her son, to not judge Catherine as to whether she was making a good job of it or a bad job of it. I must confess that at times while I was listening, I started to think, but it didn't interfere enough for me to say, look, I'm distracted, Catherine, I'm not giving you my free attention anymore. Because one device that I use with myself, and I'm sure plenty of you do too, if you notice your mind drifting, a really good remedy to that is to bring the attention back in and empathize with the other person. Because whilst your mind or my mind has been drifting, something will have happened and we have a little catching up to do. So a little dose of empathy gets me back on track and lets the other person know that I'm really still there for them. It makes sure that I'm concentrating on the right stuff, which is them. So what tends to result from this kind of helping?
So
yes, sorry, go on.
This is a me.
Yeah, yes, this is a you, and I'm going to try and get the graphics right. So you carry on, Catherine.
So I don't know whether you heard me say it somewhere in there that when we in the Q&A there was something about exploring the edges of the problem. So one of the things that we talk about is that when you get space and time, you get to put a shape, edges, solidity to a messy, confusing, intangible problem. And so it's really the clarity around what the problem is that is so fantastic to receive, and that's what you're giving. Sometimes it's a quickly actionable solution. Coming out of a conversation like this, I might have decided I was definitely going to do A or not. But it's not the end point is to have a solution. It's really not the point. And because of the clarity and a jumping off point, at least for thinking about what next, it gives a peace of mind and more energy and resolve to address this newly clarified problem. So that's why it's just so helpful to give time and silence.
Yeah. So a few do's, thanks, Catherine. A few things to aim to do. I'm just gonna. The first do is do be direct, and that piece is about making sure that you are giving the person a proper, I suppose I'm going to use the word strong, a strong offer of assistance. The second do, I think it's going to come up, do focus on the feeling and not the fact. This is definitely about what was going on in this case with Catherine's feelings. And of course, there were some facts about them, but the feeling was always the cue for me to say something empathic or to notice. If you follow the feelings, you'll latch onto the right facts. If you start to fall in love with the facts, what can often happen is that you start to fall in love with your own solutions. And thirdly, is keep yourself out of the way. My problem, which Catherine does not share, and is that I'm often in a rush. I want to crack on. I think I've seen something interesting, brackets, the solution, and I want to get going on it. When Catherine and I first met last year, around about April time, we started talking, March, April time. One of the things that struck me about Catherine was her amazing ability to, in the jargon, hold the space. She has a gift for giving silence and has this resting expression of, I'm listening, I'm there, but not in a trite way. It's not in that sort of mock, irritating therapist, head slightly inclined to one side way. So I guess, Catherine, by accident or by design, you've developed a way of giving people the space, and really you're a master of staying out of the way. Is that, can I ask you, I've never asked you this, is it a conscious thing that you do that?
Wow, I think it's a very deliberate thing to be in someone else's world. So all the body comes from that intention. So I don't think I've deliberately worked on, I think I've probably done it unconsciously, learnt what's worked.
Yeah. Okay. So the rest of us, it's just we're stuck with the fact that we have to work at it.
Well, actually, Paul, I wanted to say something, because there's a question here about right at the end of the Q&A. Catherine, did you agree with some of Paul's buttons? And what came up for me then? Shall I just put my camera on?
Yeah, go for it.
So what came up for me then is that actually it's the intention. So what was really important to me, some of the things we say are not quite right, but the intention of being there is the point. And so to your point of how do people learn to keep out of other people's way? It's that intention. You really want to be in the other person's space.
So if you're saying that you can get, I've just done it again. If you can get away with the butting in, if your intention was to do it to listen rather than to ask another question or to go off on a tangent or to have a brilliant idea. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because it was not about you having these ideas. It was about you having these ideas on my behalf.
Okay.
Which clarifies for me, your intention is to help me. So it's the helping to help the other intention.
Yeah. Okay. And what I did notice, and the litmus test I set myself is, if I'm not going to do a piece of empathy, and I think that's exactly what was it Was it who was it who raised this point? It's not Daniel, is
Robert.
it?
Robert.
Robert. Yeah. Oh yeah. Robert. That's it. I've got you now. Uh, uh, the litmus I set myself, Robert, is this an idea that I've come up with, or is this an idea that in this case Catherine has come up with? And if it's the other person's idea, what I think I'm doing is providing a service of something like, do you realize what you just said? Do you realize you might have something there? Because you said something which I really liked. So that's my stuff. But here it is. And in fact, that did happen. You said something. I said, wow, if I was your son, I'd really like that. Now, Catherine could turn around and say, well, yeah, but you're not him and you're completely different. And he wouldn't like that. I've heard and I've tried it before. And that's absolutely fine. But I kind of wanted to point out what Catherine had at her feet, that she had something going there. She had some solutions, although, as you quite rightly pointed, the solution isn't it, but it was just begging. It was just kind of there. But I wasn't committed to finding a solution. I was just committed to listening. And if we tripped over something, we tripped over 10 minutes flat. You're not going to find very much. Occasionally, you just stumble. So those are the do's: direct, focus on the feeling, keep yourself out of the way. Now, questions. Yeah, what are you thinking? What else? Yeah, Catherine, you seem to be well tuned into this Q&A pane. I'm not. I'm just going to take care of the graphics. What is there anything else in there for us?
Someone wrote, staying out of the way is the really hard bit, not jumping in with some solutions. And to me, this is the tragedy of being human.
Yeah,
so
and it is. Yeah, it is definitely the test. And the irony is that the more experienced you are, and sometimes the better you know the person, the more tempting it is to dive in and say, ooh, please, I know what to do.
There's a really nice point here from Beth saying, can you provide tips on how to end a helping session if you haven't found a solution? And also when you have found a solution.
I don't know if did anybody notice what I did? Did you notice what I did?
Well, I had actually brought it to it. I was saying I'm fine, but you actually very deliberately put an end to it by saying, are you okay to leave it there? Is that a good enough place to leave it?
Yeah.
Was one of those questions.
Yeah, so that's how I end it. And again, it's being really direct. Don't be fluffy. You don't have to apologize. You definitely don't have to apologize. I'm sorry, we've run out of time. You say, we are out of time. Are you okay to leave it at that for now? Or is that good enough for now? And it only has to be good enough. And if it's not good enough, then obviously the urgency to set a new piece of date and time is important. But again, it's putting the responsibility for the other person to own up and say, yeah, that was okay. And then you say, no, but it wasn't. It's like, okay, it sounds like you got somewhere, but not really enough. Let's do this again this afternoon, tomorrow morning, whatever. So that's how that works. Are there any more, Catherine?
From Kevin, what happens if the person is looking for you to come up with a solution? That is also a familiar place, a very familiar place.
I'm going to turn that one over to you, Catherine. I suspect you have a good response for that.
I'm thinking in a coaching situation, so I'm just trying to put it in this helping situation, but in a coaching situation, I would explore that and say, yeah, I'm noticing, or you've just asked me for a solution. I'm wondering what advice you would give yourself, something like that. So I try and turn it back. So I'm not taking it on, and I'm noticing that I'm being asked to take that responsibility on, and then I suppose making a choice about how to deal with it. That's actually what I'd say. So you're being asked. So you might say, are you asking me for my advice about what I'd do? And give them the choice, say, yes, I am. And you could give it and say, but this is your choice about whether you do it this way. And really, it's much better if you find something for yourself. I'm thinking in a kind of managing someone, being in a work situation rather than coaching. What would you add to change with that, Paul?
I think my route through that is to empathize, and I might say, Catherine, it sounds like you're keen for my advice. You're keen to hear what I think. And then Catherine would say, has to then own up, say, well, yeah, because, you know, I'm not really sure. I've thought of doing something, and I said, okay, well, what did you think of doing? Well, I thought I'd do this. And I think, wow, that would work for me if I was him. So often when people ask for advice, A, they don't want it and they won't take it unless it's the very thing they wanted to hear, in which case, why don't we cut to the chase and say, and just let them, as Catherine's pointed out, let them give themselves some advice. Because they just want it validated. But actually, we're not in any position to validate it other than to say, wow, okay, that's very comfortable for me, etc. Okay, we're out of time. It's 10:15. If we've got any questions left, we'll come back to them in a moment. Suffice to say, last couple of thoughts from me, and probably the biggest one is it really doesn't matter whether you're an experienced helper or not. Being really forthright about giving help and say, no, I really mean it. You don't seem happy. I do want to have a chance to talk about it, or just to listen to you, is the most valuable thing in the world. And when you do come to that time, then give them the maximum space. And you may or may not have an idea of just how powerful you can be as a helper by just saying nothing at all and just being there. My supervisor, David Lane, just the most terrific guy. He rarely says very much in our supervision sessions. Most of it is right at the end, and he just listens and gives me space. Final thought from you, Catherine. Do you have one?
I love your picture of being in space. It's giving space. And we fleshed out, didn't we, that it's time, silence, and attention is that space.
Terrific. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody. Catherine, thank you very, very much for giving your time and your expertise and your support and helping me to develop this whole thing, and you know, invaluable addition with your thinking and your different styles. So thank you. As always, to Nicola for doing an amazing job behind the scenes, the thankless tasks of herding all the cats into the room at the right time, making sure everybody got invitations, sorting out everything to do with databases and Infusionsoft and all that kind of stuff. And to daughter Vianne, who has just excelled herself and has given me a really nasty problem for September. We're going to come back and hopefully Vianne will be able to help with graphics again on Friday the 29th of May. We don't have a title for you yet, but Friday the 29th of May, and me and one of the gang will be back for another helping of this. If there's something you'd particularly like to hear us discussing or tangling with, and you've got some ideas or questions, please do let us know. We love getting topics from people out there who follow us, so that would be best of all. And I just say have a fantastic bank holiday weekend, and Catherine and I will stick around now for a few minutes into injury time, and we've got the empathy to do as well. Was that what you were going to prompt me for? So I'm going to do that now, but if you have to dash off 3 minutes ago at 15:15, that's absolutely fine. Take care, and we'll see you on Friday the 29th of May. Have a terrific weekend. So if you can stay, Catherine, if you can keep an eye on the question tab, and I am going to get the empathy thing up on the screen. I'm just going to get rid of this beautiful layer and just give myself a drawing layer.
We've got some lovely thanks while you're doing that.
That's very nice.
We're very thought-provoking sessions.
Are there any more questions for us that you can see? And I'm looking for
I think we've covered the questions so far, but if anyone else has got any questions, please, or you noticed anything you'd just like us to talk about, just
then
share
you
it
can
with
just chip in. Exactly. And I've grabbed the wrong letter, so bear with me while I tangle with the technology. I'm just gonna
While you're doing that, though, empathy is a really huge part of, I mean, it's the foundational piece, really, isn't it, Paul, of what we do?
Definitely, yeah.
So
And it's,
I'm feeling, you look a bit worried right now because you can't find the graphic.
no. I had to just find the layer. I knew it was in there somewhere. If you don't click on it, anyway. So yes, you're right. So here we go. So what I was doing, what you can do when you're paying attention to somebody and you want to show them that you paid attention, and that is really the objective of empathic statements. It's to show somebody some proof that you're on it. As Catherine fortunately pointed out, it really doesn't matter if you get it wrong, but trying is the important, it's the intention. And so what we do to do this without sounding like aliens is to make a statement about how they seem to feel. And this can sound like, you sound fed up. You look pleased. You seem annoyed. And so it's a statement. It's not a question. It's your best guess, based on what you picked up in what they've said, what they haven't said, what they look like, and so on. The second thing is, if you can, and this isn't absolutely essential, your best guess about what that's about. Catherine, you sound puzzled about what to do next. Catherine, so you're worried that you're going to invade his privacy. And often that's absolutely enough. But if we really want to go Rolls-Royce, is to conject, to have a guess at why is Catherine or Bob or Jane or Dave feeling that way about that thing so much. Catherine, you sound worried about invading his privacy. I guess that's because you've strayed there before by accident and got a bad response. Guessing. And then this bit here, the pause. There is absolutely no reason why you can't do that after that or that, if you can't think of the why, if it's not obvious. So you don't have to work too hard, but that feeling, that's numero uno, that's the big one. Anything you want to add to that, Catherine?
No, I think that's, it's bang on. And one of the conversations you and I had, because I've come through a sort of more traditional coaching route, is telling them how they seem rather than asking them how they seem. And I'm totally now, I've brought round to this, that it's much more effective to say you seem ABC, because you're giving data that someone can respond to, and you're really showing you're trying to get them. So I just think it's very effective, and be ready to get it wrong, because actually when you get it wrong and they correct you, that's the best thing, because you've got into it very, very fast.
And that's it. Yes, that's my hot button, isn't it, Catherine? You've got into it very fast.
Yeah, which is
and
about the time. Go on. Sometimes
when we're talking to people, and the people in this room, I think, are probably quite highly motivated in the emotional coaching space, probably. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And actually, the people, often when we're asking somebody how they feel, it's because they're not being very communicative. And potentially the reason they're not being very communicative is that they're not necessarily very conversant or comfortable with feelings. So asking somebody how they're feeling is probably about the hardest question you could ask somebody. So being prepared to do a bit more work, no, a lot more work, and say, you seem, and stick our necks out, gives them a huge bunk up. It makes it easy for someone who is not necessarily comfortable with that whole gig to be more comfortable with it, to be more skillful with it in a way that they didn't realize. So it's very encouraging. It's a great way of helping people to
There's a little thought
express.
here from Maureen, which is about the thought-provoking. She really liked the use of directiveness as a way into the space and the conversation. And I think this connects with this first point, because one part of the directiveness is you seem.
Yeah,
That noticing how they're feeling.
Yeah.
And put a label on it.
Yeah. And it's kind of like saying, tell me I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, give me the right answer, because I'm all ears. Yeah. Terrific. I think that's probably it from me. Anything else you want to add just before we let people get on with their mornings?
No, it's been a great session. I've enjoyed it too.
Terrific. Oh, so pleased. So have I. All right, everybody who's stuck around, plenty of you have a brilliant bank holiday weekend. I hope the rest of today goes well. I hope you get some peace and quiet if you've had little of it this week, or you get some noise if you've only had peace and quiet this week. But take care of yourselves, and we'll see you on the Friday the 29th of May, if not before. Take care. Bye-bye.